Welcome to Professor Pincushion. We have a fun project for you today. I'm going to show you how to create your very own hand puppet. And as you can see, I have a cute little one right here, and she likes pizza just like me, but she's not feeling well. Oh no! Brains! That's right, we're going to do a zombie hand puppet today. So let's get started and taking a look at what we need to complete this project. Let's take a look at the things that we're going to need. First and foremost is the pattern pieces. Now these are available on our site to download. So there's a variety of different little pieces, and you don't have to use all of them, just whatever you want to use. The main one is definitely the puppet piece, and of course this one is not very big, so if you want to make it bigger you can enlarge it, or if you want to make it smaller for a kid you can make them smaller. You're going to need a variety of felt. Now you can use craft felt if you want, just get a bunch of craft squares. I like using the wool felt just because it's a little bit more durable. Probably the most you're going to need is the one that you're going to make the main hand puppet out of, which I'm going to do with the black. You don't really need that much felt. You pretty much just need the squares, but for this one you probably need a couple of squares. So you can do one for the front and then one for the back. You're going to need some felt for whatever color hair you want. I like it at least having red on hand for when I'm doing the zombie part of the puppet. Some white is going to be for the bone. I like some skin color felt, some grayish color felt for when I'm doing the zombie. And then I just have another variety of colors for when I'm doing the clothes of the zombie. You're also going to need some fabric scissors. Some markers come in handy for when we're doing the embroidery. Fabric glue, so if you are doing this with a kid and they want to glue their pieces on, definitely use the glue. And also if you're doing small pieces, I like using the glue instead of stitching it. Some variety of matching floss, so we can stitch on some of our pieces. And then I have two sets of buttons. I have one set for the normal human side, and then I have white buttons here for the zombie side. And these are roughly about a 1/2 inch. I have my pins and needles that are definitely going to come in handy. And then the only thing not seen here is the sewing machine, which I'm going to use in order to stitch the front to the back. So you could do that by hand if you don't have a machine. It just makes it a little bit faster. Let's first go over what we're going to need to cut out for the human side of the puppet. So out of the main hand puppet, we need to cut out one, and I'm doing that out of my black fabric. Out of the head neck, you need one, and do it out of the flesh color of your choosing. For the hands, you're going to cut out two, and same color as you would for the head. So for the pants and the shirt, you're going to cut out one, or you can do whatever kind of outfit you want if you want to make your own thing. Now for the hair, I'm doing a girl, so I have my own little girl hair here that I'm going to do out with bangs, so it looks kind of like me. Or I also have a boy version of hair if you want to do a boy. One of the mouth, and then the only thing I don't have a pattern for is the belt, which is just basically a strip. And then I just cut a little rectangle out of my gray for the middle. So I just need to make sure it's long enough to go across the top of the pants. So that's what we need for the human side. Okay, so for the zombie side, again, out of this main hand puppet, you're going to need one of your main fabric. For the head and the hands, it's the same thing. You cut one out for the head, two out for the hands, but this time I'm using the gray fabric. The pants and the shirt is the same, cutting it out, one of each. For the hair, I'm using my zombie girl hair here, and you can get this pattern online if you want it. Also, if you want, you could just cut out little random tufts like this if you just want a crazy hairdo. This is a new addition, the brain. This is going to be part of the brain that's sticking out of the head. You'll need one of the mouth and then one of this little half of a bone thing. So again, and then also we need the belt, which doesn't have a pattern, but it's the same thing as before. The first thing I like to do is some embroidery details. Now this part is entirely optional, but I just think it's kind of a fun thing to do for your zombie. So I have my two different shirts. I have one for the human and then one for the zombie. So I use my fabric marker to sort of write what I want to say, or you can draw something if you want to do a picture. This one is what I like to eat, my personal favorite, pizza. And this is my zombie, their favorite thing, which is brains. So I just do a back stitch and writing out what I want to say with my thread. And I'm going to show you how I do it. So this one's obviously done. I'm going to work on the brains next. So I just have my embroidery floss on a needle, and if you look carefully at it, you'll notice that it's made up of 6 strands, and I just pull 2 strands off the floss because we don't need it to be really thick. But if you want it to be a little bit thicker than this, you can use about 3 or 4. That's fine. I just don't recommend using all 6. So what I'm going to do is I have it right side facing up towards me. I'm going to come up from underneath. Now the top of my bee starts about here. I'm not going to start right at the corner, but just a little ways away from the corner. And I just like writing everything out because it makes it a lot easier for me to follow along. So now here I am right here. I'm actually going to go back to the corner, to the top of my bee, and there's my first stitch. So now I'm going to go a little bit way down the side of my bee, and then I'm going to go back to my first stitch, and then down to the bottom of the bee, and then back to my second stitch. So I'm just going to do this until all my letters are outlined. So now here I'm going to go at the bottom and then go to the third stitch. So once I've stitched this whole thing, we'll move on to doing the pants. For the detail on the pants, I used my fabric marker again to draw the lines for the side pockets and then one down the middle for the separation of the pants. If you want it to look like a skirt, you can go ahead and do away with this line and just do the pockets. Again, I'm doing the back stitch, which you can see over here. I've done, and then I just used my fabric glue and I glued on my black strip for the belt, and then the little buckle is glued on as well. Next, we're going to start working on the faces. So I'm going to have a happy mouth for my human, and then we're going to have 2 little button eyes. Just place them how you like. So once you kind of have an idea of how you want the face to look, I'm actually going to remove this button and this mouth so I can sew on one at a time. So you can either have a 4-hole button or a 2-hole button. Mine's just 2-hole. So again, I'm going to get my thread on my needle. I'm going to start from underneath, going up through one of the holes. So the knot is going to be on the wrong side. And then I'm going to go through the hole underneath it. I'm going to go through the button about maybe 5 or 6 times, just to make sure it's secure. And then after that, then I'm going to sew on my next button. And then we're going to show you next on how we're sewing on the mouth, because for that we're going to be using a running stitch. All right, now for the mouth. So we're going to start out the same way, where I'm just going to start at one end and come up from underneath my head, because I want the knot to be on the wrong side. And then I'm actually going forward. So this is kind of like the opposite of a back stitch. So I'm not going back, I'm going forward. But the stitches aren't going to be right next to each other. So instead of coming up right next to my stitch, I'm going to come up maybe about 1/16 of an inch away. And then I'm going to go down a little bit in front of that. Come up a little ways away from that. So I'm always moving forward. There's always a gap in between your stitches. And I know it's kind of hard to see on the black, but we will be doing the running stitch for other pieces as well. So you'll be able to see it a little bit clearer for those. So I'm just going to go ahead, go all the way around until my mouth is attached. Continue with the faces. Next I like to do the zombie face. So the zombie face is pretty similar to the normal face. You're going to sew on the buttons. Now you'll notice this one is kind of off to the side and it has stitches right here because I kind of like to show like his eye is dangling from his head. So to do that, I just did back stitches, just a row of them together. So there's about 3 rows, 1, 2, and 3. I do about till here. And then after I stitch the 3 rows, then I sew my button into place. So it looks like the eye is on top of this stitching right here. I also use a running stitch to stitch on the mouth. This time I put the mouth on upside down. So it's the same piece, you see, as this one. This one's just right side up and this one is upside down. If you want to do teeth, it's optional. I'm just using a part of my mouthpiece and then just cutting out little jagged parts to make the teeth. And I just use my fabric glue to glue it on. And then I use some of my red embroidery floss just to do a few stitches together, like right here and right here, just to look like it has some wounds. One of the last bit of embroidery details I like to do is on the brain piece. So this is what it's going to kind of look like when it's finished. So here's your brain piece. I like to do some running stitches just to give the brain a little bit of definition. You just have to do it on the top edge. You don't have to do it on the full thing, because then you're going to take your head, you're going to just roughly cut out, make sure it's not too big, and then you're going to put some fabric glue right on these two edges right here of the brain, and then kind of just glue it into place so your brain is just kind of peeking out just like that. Now we can finally start putting all our pieces together. So I'm going to do the human side first. So you're just going to start placing it, and you just want to make sure that you don't get too close to the edges. There's going to be a 1/4 inch seam allowance all the way around. So there's no problem with the head. With the hands, you have to be a little bit more centered. And I like placing all my pieces on there, so then I can kind of see how it's all going to come together. So I have my hair, my pizza shirt, and see how my arm's just peeking out. So if I want to bring it out a little bit more, it makes it a little bit easier to see how it's going to lie. Okay, and then my pants. So the first thing we're going to do is actually put the head and the arms on. So I just lay everything on there so I can see how it's going to look, and then I can remove my top pieces, grab my straight pins, and I'll just pin it into place. And then I'll do the same thing for my arms. And then I'm going to grab my needle and thread, and I'm going to do a running stitch around each of these pieces to attach them to my main piece here. Once I have the body pieces sewn on, I can then place the rest of the pieces on. And once they're kind of like how I want it, I can go ahead and pin it into place to hold it. Pants. And then the hair. And you can see here on the head where I did my running stitch all the way around all the pieces, and you'll see that there's a gap in between each of the stitches. So then after I put this on here, I'm going to go ahead and do a running stitch on these 3 pieces as well, attaching them. So here we have the finished human side, and now we can work on the zombie side. So this is the fun side, at least the side that I enjoy working on. And just like before, I lay out my pieces so I can see how they're going to look. Now we're just going to be stitching down the main pieces as we did before. So I'm going to remove the shirt here. Just a few things to prep. Just like we did for the face, you can see I added a few stitches in this hand for a little owie there. And here I cut off some of his fingers, and then I took a little red felt to place underneath. I'm just going to glue the red felt because I cut it a little bit bigger so I can glue it to the rest of his hand. I added a few stitches down here. I cut away a part of the pants so I could put my little leg bone sticking out there. So once you have your placement here, you can go ahead and remove your pants, because we're just going to now stitch down these main parts, and then we're going to layer the other parts on top of it. So I'm just going to pin all these down, and then just like what I did before, I'm going to do a running stitch all the way around. With these pieces stitched down, I can now do my second layer, which is adding the clothes. And with the shirt, it's the same pattern as before. I just went ahead and started zigzagging cut to make it look a little bit more ragged. So the part that I cut out here at the bottom, I'll just turn this over to the back. You'll see I just added a little bit of gray. You'll see that I did a little hole right here. So it looks like his skin is showing through the shirt or through the holes. And then I'll just add my pants here, the bottom, make sure a little bit of my skin is showing through there, and then the hair. So you just want to make sure that you don't have your hair too high up, because again, there's going to be that 1/4 inch seam allowance, so we want to make sure that it's all going to be showing. And then I have this little wispy part that I want to add right there. You go ahead, pin those down, and then just like we did before with the other one, this is the last set of running stitches we have to do. So you just have to go around each of these individual pieces, and then we'll be ready to put our puppets together. Now that the two sides are done, you're going to have them, both of them are right side facing up, and you're going to place them so the right sides are together. Just going to line them up. You can go ahead and pin it, and we're going to stitch our 1/4 inch seam allowance all along the outside edge, except for this bottom portion here. So this stays open, obviously, because we need to be able to get our hand through it. But after I pin it and then I stitch it, then we're almost done with our puppet. When stitching your two pieces together, don't forget to back stitch. And I'm just using a regular width stitch, and I'm being very careful with the curvy parts. So the parts that are really curvy, you're going to kind of want to go slow on, so you can do a pretty nice and neat job. So I'm just going to go around these very carefully, and if you need to, you can go ahead and put your needle down, lift your foot, and then rotate it a little bit just to help you out there. After you finish stitching it, we only have one thing left to do. As we do with all our seams that are on a curve, you're going to want to cut these little inverted notches. So you can see I'm just doing it for the really curvy spots here. And you're going to go pretty close to where your stitching is. Just make sure that you don't actually cut your stitches, because we don't want to cause a hole. Then after that, you just have to flip it right side out and your puppet is good to go. And here we have the completed puppet. So we have the human side, and then we have the brain side. So that's all there is to completing your very own zombie hand puppet. Make sure to check out our other videos and visit ProfessorPincushion.com to view our complete library with well over 100 sewing video tutorials. New tutorials are released regularly, so make sure to subscribe to be notified of the next release. Thanks for watching!